Hello, this is Linda Vettrus-Nichols, and I have with me Heidi Hackler. Heidi is a holistic health and nutrition blogger and coach. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Awesome. You have a real zest for living, don't you?
I try. I love life, and life is meant to be lived. So
I know,
why
right?
not,
I think
right?
you're doing your best more than try, aren't you? It's because it's happening. Try kind of like shuts you down, but doing your best, it makes it happen. Yeah, tell us a little bit about like your lifestyle. I mean, you don't have a home necessarily, or you're not living in a home. You might want to share with the listeners a little bit about your personal life.
Sure. So my husband and I actually live on our 40-foot sailboat. We've lived aboard our sailboat for almost 12 years,
Wow.
and we bought our boat about 22 years ago. We actually met sailboat racing and kind of both had the dream of getting a boat and going cruising. So we've had our boat for quite a while. We raced it to Hawaii from Seattle or from Victoria, Canada to Hawaii in 1996.
Wow.
And we decided about 12 years ago that we really wanted to move aboard and starting to get ready to sail away. So we rented out our house for a few years and decided we didn't really care for being landlords and didn't ever want to go back. I personally never want to live on land again. I love living on the water so much.
Wow.
I'm a total water baby, and so we live in Seattle right now, but we have plans to get our boat down to the Caribbean within the next year and start cruising around down there, and then hopefully eventually across the Atlantic to the Med and just kind of go explore the world.
Nice. Have you run into any interesting storms?
We have. Actually, the worst storm we've ever been in was right here in Puget Sound in Seattle. We were out for the weekend with a bunch of friends, all rafted up, and there was a storm that was due to come in late in the evening, and we all decided to head home by mid-afternoon, and the storm came in early, and so it blew about 60 knots of wind, which is almost hurricane force. 70 knots is hurricane force.
Yikes.
And I said to my husband, Kirk, I said, you're never supposed to leave port in the face of a storm. Maybe we should just stay put and ride it out here where we are and not sail back home. And he said, if we can't sail across the water for 45 minutes in 60 knots of wind, then we have no business going out there trying to sail around the world. And I was like, okay, point taken. So I said, okay, if that's the case and we're going to sail home, then I'm going to drive, because if I'm not driving, I wanted to be in control, right? So if I'm not driving, I'll be freaking out. But as long as I'm driving and I have a job to do, I'll be fine. And so we sailed back home, and what normally took about 45 minutes took us about 25 minutes, and we just flew back. And
oh, wow.
It was pretty crazy. So that was actually some of the worst weather we've been in. We also have done quite a few boat deliveries down the coast to California, and on one of those deliveries, we were in 25-foot seas and 50 knots of wind off the coast of California. But it was a really beautiful sunny day, so it didn't really seem like, even though it was very high winds and big seas, it wasn't scary or anything, because the sun was out and it was beautiful out. And Kirk has been sailing his whole life and is a very accomplished sailor, so I wasn't even afraid at all. I was just like, all right, this is interesting.
Oh, wow, you were just doing it right at that soul.
Yeah.
I love it. You're out of fear. You're out of that, pain body and all the hurts from the past coming up because, the surprise something just came at you. I love it. That's very cool. That just, yeah, you're a role model for a lot of people. I want what she's having.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I try anytime that, sailing there can definitely be scary things, because, you're out in the elements and everything.
Yep.
But I think that any time that I have, sort of felt afraid, one of the things I tell myself is 12 hours from now, I'll be back home, safe in bed, or, whatever it is. I just try to think of where I'll be feeling more safe, and I just keep reminding myself, okay, 12 hours from now I'll be there, or 24 hours from now I'll be there, or whatever. And I just kind of let that calm me down.
Right? And you know, like you said, if you can't control, you'll freak out. Control freaks freak out when they can't control. I know
Right?
that one personally. For my business, it's all about like delegating, you know, getting to that point now and trusting that someone else is gonna, you know, do it the way I want it done and things like that. And it's funny, at first, you know, you start attracting in people who do make mistakes, you know, so you can kind of like get over that little bump in the road too.
Right. That's so true. Yeah,
your lifestyle, it reflects, you know, I mean, our lives, period, reflect into our businesses and how they're operating as well. So I like what you were saying about thinking about I'll be home and safe in X amount of time, you know, and this too shall pass kind of thing, like my mother always used to say.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, but
really
in business,
true.
it really is about so in business, it's about having the goal, having the end in mind, creating your business around what you really want to have happen. And so when you're in the muck or the storms, it's like, this is not my vision. This is not where I'm going, you know, but I'm going to go through this to get what it is that I'm really after, you know, doing what others won't do, you know, and then they won't have the life that you're willing to do it, so they won't have the life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you have very clear soul-centered intention, and it's exciting to watch you start to really, you know, bloom in your business, because you are a graphic designer, and you're that into the holistic piece more and more. But you know, you've been doing the great work in the holistic piece as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, that transition? Because I mean, you were 25 years now as a graphic designer, and what kind of led you into that holistic piece? Was it something personal or helping a friend or family member?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of a little bit of both. So I basically grew up with, my mom was really holistic and kind of woo-woo and out there for her time. When we were growing up, we would always be rolling our eyes going, oh, my God. Like, she was into everything metaphysical and, you know, crystals, and she's an herbalist, so she started her own herbalist company right about the time I went off to college.
Okay.
And we all kind of just thought she had lost her rocker and was crazy. But little did we know, Mom was so right, and we should have all paid attention way back then. But I remember I was in college, and my brother was still in high school, and he had a cold or something. And I remember him calling me going, I just want some NyQuil, and Mom's making me chew on some sticks or something.
Oh, no. So was it ginger?
Anyway, I kind of grew up with that background. My mom was, you know, kind of the original hippie from way back. She always made all her own food from scratch. We had whole wheat pasta growing up. I remember girlfriends used to not like to come sleep over at my house because we had that brown spaghetti. And my mom made her own whole wheat bread from scratch. She had like a mill where she ground up her own flour, you know, wheat into flour, and made her own bread and everything. So
total granola mom.
Yeah, totally. I grew up with all that stuff, and when I went off to college, I was like, done with that, you know. Junk food, bring it.
Bring it on.
And, yeah, so anyway, as the years went on, I mean, when I married my husband, or when I actually became a vegetarian when I was in college, my last year of college, on Earth Day, there was a whole big Earth Day, you know, demonstrations and everything, and I sort of like started learning about animal cruelty and commercialized farming and all that stuff, and I was horrified. I had no idea. I've always been an animal lover my whole life, and I just had never thought about where my, you know, meat came from, because growing up we actually lived on a ranch and then had a ranch right nearby us, and so all of our food growing up definitely came from people that we knew.
Yeah.
But once I was in college, I was just kind of horrified to learn about that whole thing, and I just quit eating meat right there. I was like, I do not need to be a part of this whole, you know, commercialized killing of animals.
Sure.
So when I met my husband, sailboat racing, he was also a vegetarian, so that was like a match made in heaven. We both were sailors, and we both were vegetarian, and that was awesome. He was also very into meditation. He practiced TM, and so when we first started dating, he basically was like, meditation's a big part of my life, and, you know, if you want to hang out with me, you might want to learn to meditate. So I learned TM about 25 years ago, and we've been meditating ever since together. So for me, the whole nutrition part of it kind of came about where I've had some food allergies. I had a lot of skin rash issues and some digestive issues, and kept going to the doctor, and nobody could ever really figure anything out. I got diagnosed as celiac about 15 years ago, which was long before a lot of people knew about gluten intolerance or celiac. I now actually think that I don't have celiac. I think that I just have gluten intolerance and not celiac.
Oh, good.
At any rate, yeah, it's a little bit good. But I also was diagnosed with dairy and egg allergies, which I definitely still have. So I had to really drastically change my diet about 15 years ago to cut out all gluten and dairy and eggs. And already being vegetarian, that kind of cut out a huge portion of what I could eat because, you know, we subsisted on pasta, and I ate a lot of dairy and eggs and things. And so I just had to start making changes back then. And then subsequently, also kind of started paying more attention to what my mom was doing with her herbalism and things. And since I was, you know, getting into meditation and sort of starting to live a little bit more alternative lifestyle, I guess you would say, started going to alternative doctors, especially when regular MDs weren't able to help me at all with my skin and digestion issues. It was finally a naturopath who diagnosed me with the gluten thing. And growing up, I had also seen my mom getting regular acupuncture appointments and massage appointments, and so I kind of started doing that as well. I have friends that are acupuncturists and friends that are massage therapists, and so when some of them were going through massage school and acupuncture school and they needed guinea pigs to practice on, I was like, sure, practice on me, you know.
Yep.
And so I've just really become totally into alternative medicine and all types of things. I became Reiki level 3 certified about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, probably 15 years ago. That was actually interesting. That was for my cats. We had 2 cats, and they were having some issues when we moved onto the boat, and I contacted an animal communicator, and she really helped us a lot to work through some issues that our cats were having. And she was a Reiki master, and she suggested that I learn to do Reiki so that I could Reiki the cats and help calm them down. They really did not like going out on the boat so much.
Oh, I bet.
And so that was the main reason that I decided to get Reiki certified, was so that I could work with my cats. And subsequently, I do Reiki. I Reiki myself all the time, and I Reiki my husband and our new kittens. Our old cats have passed on. We have brand new kittens right now, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And they're liking the boat so far. We haven't taken them out sailing yet, but so far they like being on the boat anyway. But I Reiki friends and family, and if asked, I will do Reiki sessions on people, but mostly I just do Reiki on friends and family.
Sure.
So that kind of whole holistic thing just started evolving, a little bit at a time, changing my diet and getting more into alternative medicine. And then a lot of my friends, if they got a cold or they got sick or something, they would call me up and say, hey, what should I take for this? Because I think in general, maybe Seattle is just kind of this really green bubble out here on the West Coast, but I think a lot of people out here, more mainstream people, are into alternative medicine, and I don't think it's just a crowd to hang around with. Like almost everybody I know, will go get acupuncture or massage or whatever, whereas 15 or 20 years ago, I don't think that was so much the case. I think people would think that was a little bit crazy. So
Probably
I think all
not.
that.
It's spreading. And West Coast tends to spread towards East Coast as well. So
right.
There's it.
So I think all that has just become a little bit more mainstream, which is nice. And then so I've just helped friends over the years with what things they should be taking. And my mom gave me a really great herbalist book many years ago. It has all kinds of tinctures and teas and things in it. So if I have a cold, I have this great tea remedy that's from that book that I make, and I've given that to tons of friends for when they get colds. It works really great.
Oh.
And things like that. And the reason I went back to nutrition school about 3 years ago was that my best friend had actually gone through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition program. And the whole time she was in the program, she just kept saying, Heidi, you got to be doing this. This is right up your alley. You really would like this. And she just kept recommending it to me. And I was getting a little bit disenchanted with my graphic design career. I still really love graphic design, but the technology aspect is changing so rapidly. And I've been designing and building websites. I do print design and web design both. But I've been designing and building websites for about 15 years, since the very early days of websites. I worked at one of the very first web design companies in the country that was here in Seattle.
Wow.
And so I knew how to build websites from scratch doing HTML coding.
Sure.
But in the past, I would say 5 years or so, technology is changing so rapidly. It's become really difficult for a sole proprietor designer to keep up with everything. It's just impossible to do it all yourself anymore, and you've got to have developers, and you've got to integrate into all the different social media, and things are changing so rapidly that I was feeling really overwhelmed, and I was losing perspective of the creative side. I wasn't getting to be creative. I was having to just, manage all these processes and technology, and that wasn't fun for me. So I still love being creative and doing all the, design part of it, but less so the technology part. So I decided to go to the nutrition school that my friend had gone to, and not really knowing what I would do with it at first. I just thought I would learn more about it for myself and for friends and family. And then kind of just started blogging from there, because I was learning so much stuff, and I was like, why doesn't everybody know this? Why doesn't everybody know these things about nutrition? A lot of them are just, either science-based biology or total common sense that our hunter-gatherer ancestors have known for, millennium, and that we've just thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And all the food in the grocery store that's there now, a lot of it's poison. I mean, and one of the things, I think it's Michael Pollan said, don't eat anything that your great-grandmother would not recognize as food.
I know, Facebook posts, right? You see that stuff out there.
Exactly. If you walk into the grocery store today, 90% of what's in there would not have been recognizable as food 100 years ago. It's chemicals, it's artificial coloring, it's artificial flavoring, it's genetically modified food, and so
it's
the
not
more I
breaking
learned,
down, right?
Yeah.
It's not down. So, like, put the fast food out on your deck, and it'll sit there for a month and still look like you could take a picture of it for the restaurant.
So true, right? It's
scary. Quickly does it break down. When people tell me that something is sugarless, that's when I freak out. That's when this control freak freaks out. I was like, oh, what makes it like that? I want to know what makes it sugarless. That's worse to me than sugar.
Absolutely.
Sugar is my number one food, sensitivity. Yeah, I suppose you could call it even an allergy. Let's dig into that real quick, the sensitivities versus allergies, because I worked with kids with special needs, and they would be tested for allergies. They didn't have allergies, but they were still really having these major issues, and it was so obvious it was coming from food. And, for me, because I was checking for that, but for parents, they didn't have a clue. And so, like, an allergy is more of a physical sign, like the dark circles under the eyes, or like from dairy sometimes, or fats. Sometimes people's livers and gallbladders aren't handling the fat well, or red cheeks. Be more of what is it? Red cheeks? I forget. But like puffy cheeks, gluten really puffs you up. Just
right.
Stay away from gluten, have some gluten, see if your tummy just doesn't go puff, like it's that time
of
look. Right? And
exactly.
So when it's sensitivities, you're not getting these physical symptoms, a lot of times just behavior. And Doris Rapp was wonderful pioneer in the field, and she had a little one sitting on Mommy's lap and handed him a banana. And here's this real sweet little kid, and man, like the banana barely hit his tongue, and he was off. So energetically, like homeopathics, food just touching our tongue can spin us out, especially when it's a sensitivity. So do you think you had allergies or more sensitivities, or a little of both, would you say?
Well, I think with my dairy and eggs, those are definitely allergies.
Okay.
With the gluten, I think that it's a sensitivity. Even though I was diagnosed with celiac, there's 4 different tests that you can take for celiac, and I had 3 of them, and it was conclusive on 2 of them, but not on 1 of them. And then the other one I haven't had done, which is the genetic test. But I'm pretty sure I've come in contact with gluten, unknowingly enough times that I didn't have a reaction after I've been off of it for so long.
Sure.
That I think that it's not celiac. I still don't know for sure, but the thing with food sensitivities, I mean, they can manifest very similarly to allergies. It just depends on the person and the sensitivity and the severity of it. But I think that one of the things that's happening with regard to that has to do with leaky gut. And leaky gut is where people's intestines just get kind of really messed up, whether from antibiotics. A lot of people have had a lot of antibiotics in their life, even when they were a kid, or from being sick as an adult or something. If they're eating like conventional beef and chicken, they're maybe getting a lot of antibiotics in their system that way through the food chain. And antibiotics just wreak havoc on your gut biome. But with leaky gut, what ends up happening is the cells in your intestinal walls actually kind of start separating apart and leaving spaces or gaps between the intestinal cells. And so when you eat something, it doesn't get fully digested. It can actually leak out through the intestinal walls and into the bloodstream or into the body cavity. So you can get like little chunks of undigested food going into the body cavity or into the bloodstream. And so your body sees that as an invader, right? Because there's not supposed to be something there. And so the immune system goes on high alert and comes and attacks that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a gluten protein molecule or it's some dairy or, fruit or vegetable, whatever it is. And so if people's guts are really out of whack, which there's significant evidence to show that most Americans' guts are really out of whack, then a lot of people probably have leaky gut. And so whenever they eat things like that, the food molecules are going where they're not supposed to go and causing an immune response. So that, I think, is sort of the underlying part of food sensitivities, as opposed to, maybe not an actual allergy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I did, I have had issues myself with the leaky gut and working with parents of kids with special needs that way. And in my other life, when I had my Whole Child Institute, and I collected the stories of the families that I helped. They were very diverse. You can probably get the book for a penny, and I'm not kidding, because you know how it is nowadays with books. But out on Amazon or wherever, challenging children a puzzle to be solved. And it's just interesting to me because the real cutting edge people say that book is still cutting edge, and I finished it in 1998.
Oh, wow.
I was drawing from books, from the 1930s, so it's just like, that forgotten society. We forgot how we used to eat, and
exactly.
we've forgotten how to cook. Kids nowadays, it's like they have no clue how to cook. They do now because they have the internet. As long as we have Google, we can cook, right?
Right.
Don't even need to call, Mom, how do I do this? Just Google it.
Well, one interesting thing I learned when I was in nutrition school is that the number one most purchased type of books today are cookbooks, and the number one most watched TV shows in America are cooking shows, but fewer people today than ever before in history can actually cook. So people are buying cookbooks and they're watching the cooking shows, but they're still not actually cooking. And a lot of people, just don't know how to cook. Maybe they grew up with a mom that wasn't at home to teach them, or a dad that wasn't around to teach them. I feel really fortunate. I had a stay-at-home mom, and she had us all in the kitchen from age 7 on. And, we were, I think probably by the time we were 10, we were responsible for one dinner a week, and really just made sure that we all knew how to cook, which was awesome. But so many parents are so busy these days that they just, they're not home to cook. In fact, I heard a story on NPR recently about this, and one woman said, she's at work all day, and when she gets home from work, she said, I just want to hang out with my kids. The last thing I want to do is cook. And I thought, and so she gets takeout every night to come home so that she can just hang out with her kids and not cook. And I thought, why don't you have your kids in the kitchen with you and have, teach them how to cook and have them help you, and it can all still be a family bonding experience, but you're in the kitchen learning healthy habits instead of teaching your kids to eat takeout every night.
Yeah, and then there's that other piece as a mom who has kids and is working full time. Her B12 is, her magnesium B12 levels are probably seriously low, and then if she's in time, her D, is off, and it's sort of a vicious cycle. You don't have the energy. Cooking takes a lot of neural energy. Just the standing alone to hold our bodies upright is very difficult. And sitting on a chair all day, the most difficult movement a person can make is sitting on a chair. Isn't that wild?
That's crazy. Yeah, I've had a stand-up workstation for probably 10 years, and I love it. I mean, I stand all day long, and it's awesome. I love it. I don't like to sit.
Yeah? Good for you. That's cool. Yeah, then those workstations, they're starting to become more and more popular, too. Very cool. Well, I love this. Great interview here, Heidi. Thank you so much. And your blog, where can we find your blog? It's Happy Well Lifestyle, and then you can go out to the blog from your website, or?
It's actually, the blog is the homepage of my website, so happywelllifestyle.com will be my homepage for my website, and the homepage is the blog, and then other things I have on the site include a lot of references for books and videos on holistic health and nutrition. I've got some products that I recommend. Another thing that's really kind of a big important factor for me is health and beauty products and the toxins that are in those and what we're putting on our skin, because many people don't realize that your skin absorbs 60% of whatever you put on it. And I think people also don't realize that the FDA does not regulate health and beauty products. So there are all kinds of toxic chemicals out there in the drugstore lurking on shelves in your shampoo and your conditioner and your lotion and your deodorant and your toothpaste. And so I have a product area on my site where I recommend products that I've personally vetted and that are healthy, toxic-free. And then I also have links to sites like EWG, Environmental Working Group, has a great database called Skin Deep. So that's ewg.org/Skin Deep. And you can type in your health and beauty product name into their database, and it will pull up a list and show you exactly what's in it, how toxic it is. It rates everything from a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 to 3 is non-toxic and is fine to use, and then 4 through 6, I think, are sort of considered medium toxicity. They're okay, but they have some toxins in them. And then 7, 8, 9, and 10 are really toxic and cause cancer, and you just don't want to be using those. One of the things as well is that hair dye, dark-colored and brown hair dye, has a chemical in it called PPD, which is really toxic and has been directly linked to several cancers, including bladder cancer and lymphoma. Mm-hmm. And if you look at statistics, there have been a lot of hairdressers over the years that have died from bladder cancer and from leukemia or lymphoma. And my best friend got lymphoma last year, And we were trying to figure out, what it stemmed from, and possibly from hair dye. She had been dyeing her hair for many years. And so doing all this research and finding out how toxic that PPD stuff is, I just decided cold turkey to stop coloring my hair, even though, I turned 50 last year and my hair is turning gray. And I just said, my health is more important to me than my vanity. And, the funny thing is I actually love my gray hair, and I still have a little bit of brown left at the ends, and I can't wait to get it cut off because I think I look 100 times better in gray hair than I ever did in brown hair. So
yeah, isn't that funny? My husband and I too, and I was coloring my hair, and then finally they're like, your gray is all over. So, and they knew I really didn't want to be coloring my hair. So if you want to stop coloring your hair, you've got this nice gray, just like flecks or whatever it is,
right.
Yeah, and it looks like I have it done that way. It looks like I have highlights or whatever it is. It just looks like they did it to me, and it's all natural, and it does look nice all over. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I just say to anyone out there who is currently dyeing their hair, just really be careful, because there really is no safe dark-colored hair dye. Even I went to Whole Foods and I just thought, well, I'll get some organic kind and dye it myself, And even at Whole Foods or any of our local food co-op or whatever, even the ones that say they're organic still have PPD in it. And I talked to my hairdresser about it, and he said that PPD is basically the chemical that adheres the coloring to the hair shaft, and without it, the hair coloring won't stay. So there is apparently some type of coloring you can get that's semi-permanent, and you have to, reapply it every week or two if you really have to dye your hair. But otherwise, any dark hair dye out there, and I don't know about blonde. The PPD is not in the blonde dyes, but I think that there are other toxic chemicals in there as well. So you think about how close that is to your head and your scalp and your brain, and all that stuff is going right through your skin. Right. Towards your brain, and it's horrifying.
It is, and the more toxic you get, the bumpier your head gets, too. That's another sign of toxicity. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Your head gets kind of bumpy. Yeah, it's just wild out there. What about henna? I know it doesn't stay in, but henna, have you heard anything using henna?
I think that henna's okay. It tends to be just like that reddish color, so... For me personally, I don't like how I look with red hair, so I didn't want to do that. But henna, I think, is safe. I think it's a natural plant-based dye, and I don't think that has any toxins in it. I would look at the labels. There are probably some hennas out there that are synthetic hennas that do have chemicals in them.
I know, right?
Just because we love to synthesize everything.
Yeah, when it comes to coloring your hair, the hardest hair shaft, whatever, to absorb the color is the gray. It's almost like it's repelling, not absorbing. And so, I was pretty gray at my temples, and they would put extra on just to get it to take the color. So I know it is difficult to cover over, so to speak.
Well, it was interesting because I wrote a blog post about my decision to go gray, and it's actually been my most read and shared and commented on post of any I've written, and I've been writing my blog for about 18 months. And the number of women who came out and said, thank you so much for writing about this. I've been wanting to go gray, but it's, sort of a societal stigma, I think, that people think that they try to look younger, or a lot of women commented that they felt that they would be not as respected in the workplace or something if they were seen to be gray-haired and too old. Right. But a lot of people just said, thank you. I've really been wanting to go gray, but I haven't had the courage to do it myself. And now that you wrote this post, I'm just going to stop coloring my hair and go gray.
It's about coming out, right? It's coming out.
It is, exactly. I said, gray is the new blonde or whatever, Gray is the new black.
Well, it was cute when I don't know if it was, I think more like the 30-year-olds where they started coloring their hair gray. And it was almost, they knew that this was sort of their position in society to take a stand and to step out for us older women going, hey, it's beautiful. It shows wisdom. I'm okay with, I don't know, it was interesting timing, and now all of a sudden the rest of us are going, yeah, I'm not going to color my hair anymore and let it go gray. So it's funny
Right.
how brains work, our egos
Yeah,
work.
I think the more of us that can just, stand up for our right to not be toxified by
Yeah, right?
color.
Another thing I wanted to... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say just say no to chemical companies and their bottom line, right?
Oh, I know. Or even just the food, there's chemists that are hired to do those cookies that have those white centers and those chocolate outsides and
Exactly.
tips, you can't eat more than one. Why? Because a chemist created it.
Yeah, exactly.
For chemicals,
eat real food.
Your brain. Yeah, eat real food. And these days, what in the world is real food? So that's what I kind of wanted to jump into next. There's that whole controversy over the whole GMO and all of that. So watching out for the GMOs. Do you have anything to say about GMO or help the listeners understand a little bit more what that whole GMO thing means?
Yeah, I do actually. So GMO means it's genetically modified. That is different than hybridization. So we have been hybridizing plants for probably thousands of years. Hybridizing is when you just, graft two different plants together or, hybridize two seeds into one. So they do that for apples all the time. That is not GMO. GMO is when they actually go in and genetically modify the gene of a plant by adding something else. For example, there are some tomatoes where they have inserted a gene from a salmon, and it has something to do with coloration, I believe, so that the tomato stays more red or, looks red and ripe even when it's not or something. So you've got fish genes inside of your tomatoes. Well, if somebody doesn't want to eat fish for whatever reason and they eat a tomato, they unwittingly are eating fish. The more important thing, I think, is where it comes to wheat and soy and even sugar beets. But Monsanto is just really pushing the whole chemical GMO thing and telling us that it's totally safe. The problem there is that the government is not doing any studies on their own to see how safe it is. They're just relying on Monsanto and other companies to do their own studies. And, of course, they're going to tell us it's safe because they want to sell their product. So with wheat and soybeans and corn in particular, they have spliced into the gene, they have spliced in glyphosate, which is a chemical that's found in Roundup, which is a weed killer. And so one of the problems there that research has shown from Europe is that what that does to basically repel the bugs that are eating the wheat or the corn or whatever is when the bug eats it, it punches holes in the stomach or the intestinal lining of that bug, and the bug dies. So interestingly enough, our gut biome, the little bugs that are in our intestines helping us digest our food, are very similar to the bugs that would eat the corn and the wheat and things like that. And so there has been some research showing that when we eat GMO wheat or corn or soy, that the glyphosate from that is doing the same thing to our gut biome. So it's punching holes in the little stomachs of the little gut bugs. Anyway, and that's kind of helping mess up our gut biome as well. Interestingly, there has not been any research done on this in the U.S. The research is all coming out of Europe, and most of Europe has banned GMO foods. Many states in the U.S. are trying to ban it as well, but Monsanto has millions of dollars. Like, for example, in Washington State last year, we tried to ban GMOs in this state, and Monsanto put $42 million into the campaign to shut that down, and that did not pass. But one of the really scary things is that Monsanto over the years, and other big chemical companies, it's not just Monsanto, they give lots and lots and lots of money to major universities for research and things like that. Well, if if a scientist or professor at one of these universities wants to do a study about GMOs to see if they might be harmful or not, or if other chemicals may be harmful, then Monsanto and other chemical companies tell the university that they're going to pull the plug on their funding, and the university doesn't want to lose any money, so they tell the professor that they're not allowed to do that research. So it's happening all over the country. It's rampant, and people are not aware of that, but the majority of research being done at the university level is totally controlled by major corporations and chemical companies. And so luckily, at least people in Europe are doing studies because we can't do them here. And while it's not conclusive yet whether or not GMOs are really bad for you or not, my personal belief is that I just want to know what I'm eating. I just want things to be labeled so that I can make that choice whether or not I want to eat it. It's possible that maybe GMOs are not bad for you, but I want to know what I'm putting in my own body, and I want it to be labeled. So that's kind of my stance on that.
Yeah, and so what I think you just said about the bug that, gets a hole punched in its stomach and dies, our gut bugs are actually eating those bugs, and they get a hole punched in their stomach as well. Is that kind of...
No, actually, our gut bugs are the same as those type of bugs.
Got it.
So when we eat those GMO foods and our gut bugs start processing that, then they get the hole punched in their stomach, so to speak,
So it's kind of
like
an
exactly
antibiotic.
How it works, but
yeah, it's kind of like an antibiotic where it kills the good gut bugs and the bad gut bugs. Is that sort of the bottom line?
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's huge. And then there's a lot of antibiotics and stuff into our water as well.
Right.
That's not cleaned out. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah, the other thing with wheat in particular, there currently in the U.S., I don't think there currently is any GMO wheat, but one of the things that is happening to wheat, and I wrote an article on my blog about this as well, is that about 15 years ago, wheat farmers realized that if they sprayed Roundup on all the wheat about 2 or 3 days before they harvest it, it would actually kill the wheat, and the wheat would dry up and start to desiccate, and then when they harvest it, it was much easier on the harvesting machines to harvest dried out wheat instead of green wet wheat.
Yep.
And so they're spraying Roundup on all the wheat in this country. So unless you're eating wheat that specifically says it is organic, you can pretty much be guaranteed it has been sprayed with Roundup right before it was harvested. And so you're ingesting those chemicals, and people don't know that.
Right, and what I wrote about in my book was the burning of the corn fields. They used to burn the fields, and then they figured out, well, if they burn the fields with chemicals, it's yada yada so much better, and I suppose it's the weed and the bug control on top of it. So so then what's our plant, taking in for nourishment as it grows? It's taking in the chemicals that we're using.
Exactly. Yeah. And the soils in this country too, 100 years ago we used to have really rich, fertile soils, and the soils are full of micronutrients and minerals and things like that get sucked up into the plant, right? That's why our plants are so full of vitamins and minerals, is because it comes from the earth, it comes from the soil. But the soils have been so over-abused in the past 100 years that there's virtually no really good, juicy soil out there anymore, and so our food is much less nutrient-dense than it used to be as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just another reason to eat organic and try to eat locally from local farmers. Even just eating organic isn't necessarily great because there's a lot of local farmers who can't afford the whole organic certification process, which can cost into the millions of dollars. So they might be local and not using any pesticides or anything like that, but they're not allowed to say they're organic because they haven't gone through the government certification process.
Right.
So I think it's really good to buy local as much as possible and buy from farmers that and we go to farmers markets a lot and get stuff there, and it might not say organic, but if you talk to the farmers who grew it and find out they're not using any chemicals, then that's awesome. Whereas there's still big corporations that are putting out organic food, like at Whole Foods. You can buy all these organic greens and things like that that are mass produced. Well, I'm not sure that the soil that those are being grown in, even though they're technically organic, I'm not sure that soil is any better off than non-organic soil because it's devoid of nutrients, right?
And the laws are changing how long it takes to create organic soil. I think it used to be like 8 years, now I think it's less. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
And eating local. And, even like you said, that's a really good point. It might not say organic. So just knowing where your food is coming from, period. What was done on that land before they were like growing it on that land, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love it. Thank you. This has been
wonderful.
Just
if we remember that we are what we eat, every cell in our body is comprised of the food that we put into it. So if we're just filling our bodies with chemicals and artificial flavorings and artificial colorings, well, that's what your cells are going to be comprised of, and it's no wonder that cancers and so many diseases are rampantly increasing.
Yep.
Yep,
and it's about keeping that immune system up and understanding, like you said, the leaky gut concept. And I know, working nutritionally, not that I had the background to it, but I was helping my own kids and learning, and then I was helping steer parents to the right providers and stuff like that. But, if you take a scope down into the intestinal walls of a child with autism, they're a lot of times their guts are just like raw meat. Those little villi that looks like shag carpet that actually floats around and grabs food, it has burst, and that's what's supposed to be absorbing your nutrients and getting it into your bloodstream. So, and they want to eat all white foods, and they do, right, is to make the kind of like a paste to cover over that villi and like almost like heal the villi. And there are some dietitians that will do that for people, even like with colitis and stuff. So that's been really fascinating. And was it B12 that really helps to heal the villi?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that.
Well, one of the things with that too, like with celiac, the villi basically just gets, shredded off, almost like shards of glass, cutting it off. And the villi is where the lactase lives. So lactase is what helps you break down lactose in dairy.
Yep.
And that lives all in the villi. So if your villi is damaged, then you pretty much aren't able to digest dairy because the lactase is just gone,
Yeah. Well, enzymes are so huge, and I've watched different practitioners when someone's in like really severe pain. Sometimes, they'll prescribe enzymes for them, and I ate my way out of fibromyalgia, and my friend ate her way out of lupus. And
oh wow.
Yeah, we did it through eating raw. But then, when I was going through my divorce, I was losing weight so drastically, and my cranial sacral massage therapist, Chinese medicine woman, told me that my spleen wasn't heating up. And someone had told me, don't eat anything raw, make sure you eat cooked and chew it 30 times. And it was like, I'm going to become anorexic, in my head if I'm doing that. I turned to her, and she found some plum flour makes them, but they're little pea balls, and there was a certain one that warmed the spleen, helped with digestion, helped with the immune system. And, some people need to be on the rest of their lives. And she said, let's just try it for 2 weeks, see how you're doing. And that did the trick. But I had, I'm like 5'6" and normally about 124 pounds. And, I dropped to 117. And then,
oh, wow.
Later even dropped to like 114. And so that's what turned me around was, getting on what was appropriate for my body. And, wow, that was something else to have a body that was into anorexia and the brain wasn't. It was
well, that's, interesting point you bring up because bioindividuality is that every single body is different, and what might work for some person might not work for someone else. You know, some person thrives on being a vegetarian and someone else really needs to have meat, or somebody thrives on a raw diet and somebody else doesn't. So one of the things when I'm coaching clients is I try to really, you know, figure out that bio-individuality and what works for people. I have people keep a food diary for 2 weeks and write down everything they eat and write down their moods and their feelings and just, you know, try to correlate what they're doing. The other thing, too, I just was going to bring up is that there's been a lot of association with allergies and with environmental allergies and food allergies tied together. So if people have a lot of hay fever and environmental allergies, there's a very high likelihood that they have an undiagnosed food allergy. And if they get their food allergy under control and stop eating that food, a lot of the environmental allergies just go away.
Right.
So
for me, it was like peanuts and eggs and things that would raise my histamine levels. You know, and I used to like live on Sudafed. Oh my gosh! And I used to.
So did I. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, tried it gum with the formaldehyde thing. You know, I mean, with what is it that changes into formaldehyde? My word.
Is it aspartame or?
Yeah, aspartame, and now that's called amino sweets, and and wow, that stuff is so dangerous. It's a neurotoxin, and I wrote about that too. I got to interview a lady who testified in the, I don't know, way up in the court system with pilots. There were pilots that were testifying that it was a neurotoxin, and it really did affect their flying ability. Yeah. So, and her daughter had seizures from some sort of Kool-Aid type drink that had the aspartame in it. And she had gotten a blood disease, so they were testifying in court over that, and that was an interesting interview I did with her to put in the book. Yeah,
I really think that a lot of the mental illness issues in this country and the, you know, so many just out of control gun violence and things like that, I truly believe it stems from our diet. And if people were eating a healthier diet, I think a lot of that anger and violence would just dissipate, because eating all those chemicals and toxins definitely affects your brain, and you cannot think straight when you're just fueling your body with toxic chemicals. I mean, there's a direct correlation.
Yeah, Diet, Crime, and Delinquency was a old book, but I mean, it was great at documenting that
it's really true.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're running a little bit late, so we're going to wrap this up. And Heidi, thank you so much. Heidi Hackler, and her website is happywelllifestyle.com. And Heidi, you have a gift for people too. Is that the same URL?
I do. Yeah, I do have a free gift. I have my little handout of top 5 easy tools to use to live a happier, healthier life. And so the link for that is happywelllifestyle.com/5-tools-happy-healthy-life.
Otherwise, but you could probably go to the home page and find it how?
Yep, you can find it on the home page. Right at the top of the home page, it just says free gift, and if you click there to download your free gift, you can get it right there.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for your time. It was really great talking with you today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It is definitely a big love of mine, is to get the word out on being healthy.
Absolutely. The more people know, the healthier we can all be, and, you know, better off for the country and the planet as a whole, right?
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Linda. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.